Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, everyone. Whatever time zone you're in, be aware that it's just a time zone, that there really isn't any time, so we're right here together. And we're talking about an adventure of creation. We're having a conversation about an adventure of releasing our inner splendor, an adventure of opening ourselves up to our soul's purpose. And it is an adventure. I can remember a number of years ago when Conversations with God was first released. And I thought it was very powerful because it really articulated, the principles that I was teaching, and it brought forth millions of people into this discussion. Heretofore, people were unconscious. They had all kinds of dim views about the presence of God. And I think about those early days. I think about the adventure of my own soul. Most people don't know this, but first of all, let me just say something about Neale and I bumped into each other over the years at conferences, and seminars, and programs, and we've always had a liking of each other. And it's probably more than a liking, it's like really a coherence around these fundamental ideas and principles.
I love
practices.
I'm in love with you.
Yeah.
I'm just going to give it a name.
Yeah, love is a good name. It's a good word. And I love this gentleman, this guy, and he's also a rascal. I love that because I'm a rascal as well. And so over the years, there's been this love affair. And today we get to play with each other in a way we've never played with each other before. But I'd say, in my own unfolding, there was a time in my life where I didn't go by Michael. I actually had a different name. And my name at that time was Param Atman. And I wrote under that name. I had little pamphlets under that name because I was reading spiritual text about the Atman presence and Param Atman. And Param Atman actually lit up in the book. And so I took that on as my spiritual name. And that's what my name was. I taught under that name. I'm not talking about having agape, it's way before agape. I had private clients, did healings with people. And interestingly enough, it came upon this realization, that Michael was not evolving because I was hanging out in this identity called Param Atman, which was authentic, it was real. And I realized in order for Michael's soul to evolve, I had to go back and be Michael again. So I dropped the name Param Atman, reclaimed Michael, so that Michael's soul could evolve to its next iteration. Whereas when I was playing as Param Atman, I shouldn't say the word playing because it was real. I was in these higher frequencies, but I wasn't integrated into Michael. So one of the things I did, I turned my garage into a soundproof room. I had mattresses, and I would go into this room at least 2 hours every single day. And I would do inner work. Now keep in mind, I had this big spiritual awakening, but I needed to integrate it. And I would do mirror work, I would do affirmation work, I would do anger work, I would do forgiveness work. I would do this work for hours every single day, looking at myself in the mirror and say, you, Michael, are. He, Michael, is. I, Michael, am. I would do all this kind of work so I could integrate these higher frequencies into Michael so that this person could evolve and become a greater iteration. So I wasn't split. It wasn't like, I go into these higher frequencies and then come back, And that particular time in my life, a lot of inner work, a lot of looking at unevolved aspects of myself, immature aspects, seeds of greatness that were in embryonic states. And as the years went on, Michael became more integrated with the higher frequencies and could be more of himself. But you know what? It was an adventure. And one of the things it taught me was that every single being has that greatness within me. I'm not special. I'm not special. My mother wasn't a virgin, and lo and behold, there's Michael. We all have the capacity to go on an adventure and actually participate in an act of creation, as you like to say. We get to participate in an act of creation and become artists of our soul and paint with the colors of our soul on this canvas that we call time and space. It's a canvas that we get to paint with the colors of our soul, evolve into our greatest expression, and it's infinite, greater expressions of ourself. And that journey today has brought me sitting here with Neale Walsch, who masterfully, even though he doesn't like that word, sometimes masterfully brings forth what he has heard from the power and the presence and the love of God. And it's brought me to this moment where I get to speak to people every single week and teach every week and bring forth articulations of the Spirit that today I'm well more integrated in than when I first had my first awakening, which I saw everything, but I wasn't integrated. I could describe it, but it took years of integration work and adventure to enter into those kind of moments of creation, so that I'm here with you today.
And you know what, Michael? I want to add that it doesn't have to take years of integration. I understood that it took years for Michael, and it took years for me, frankly. But my big message that I try to share as part of this particular masterclass program is that it doesn't have to take years. And this might even be over-promising, but the truth is, for me, it can happen relatively quickly. You know, it's interesting, Michael, you and I have had so many experiences in life that are identical or very, very nearly identical. You're not going to believe this. You're going to think I'm making this up. You guys might think I'm making this up too right now. But in fact, I too spent the first 25 years of my life with a different name. I was known as Bob White.
Really?
Yeah, it was a broadcasting name. It was my name for after I was a member of the American Federation of Radio and Television Artists and Equity, Actors Equity. And my name on the air was Bob White because when I first started in broadcasting at the age of 19, I would use my birth name, Neale Walsch. But my program director at the first radio station that I worked at said, every time I'd come on the air and I'd say 20 after 4 o'clock on the Neale Walsch show, he kept on getting letters to Neale Wall because it sounded like the Neale Walsch show.
Oh, Neale Walsch show, yeah.
Yeah, because I couldn't separate it. And then I found myself exaggerating it, saying the Neale Walsch show, and that sounded kind of weird. So finding the program director or the station manager, somebody came in and said, you know, you need to change your name if you're going to be in this business, because this name doesn't work in this business. So I chose the name Bob White. And I was known as Bob White in 4 different radio markets around the country and became Bob White. So now that's that. I mean, I signed autographs that way, at events. I was at, my big events, in those days I would be the personality at the opening of a new shopping center. With Bob White from WYRE Radio, Anyway, what's funny is I too started with a whole different persona, and I became that persona.
Yeah.
I left my childhood name behind. I became Bob White, developed a whole personality around that.
Yeah.
And a whole persona, and then I had my conversation with God experience when everything in my life had fallen apart. And without getting into all the details of that, but I just had, because the details are, of course, in the books, in case you want to pick up one of those books, book 1 in particular. But when I had my conversation with God, I had the exact same experience you're just describing. Because even when I was experiencing the book, I was still thinking of myself as Bob White. And then it came time to maybe send it to a publisher, because I often tell the story, and if you've heard the story once before, please forgive me, but to give you the 10-second version, I was told in the dialogue, this will one day become a book. You will make of this one day a book. And so I went to the publisher that I thought I could get to publish it